Did you know that you actually don't need to give a newborn their name right away? Yeah. In California, you actually have 10 days after birth to name them. And in some places, it can actually be longer. Well, how do I know this? Well, A, Google, and also B, because I'm one of them. My parents could not figure out what to name me. I mean, they had all of these beautiful and wonderful Caribbean names picked out, since that is my background. I'm Afro-Caribbean. But it wasn't until they got home and they saw my brother and my sister watching on TV this little known figure in the world at that time, little known. They watched this figure drop 37 points on the road in a hostile environment against the Cleveland Cavaliers, all while doing it in a Chicago Bulls jersey. And the rest is history. They decided to name me Michael. And what a pleasure it is to be able to carry that name right now and to be able to share this virtual space with you today. So as you just heard, my name is Michael, Mike Brown for the full one. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a toddler educator, coach, and consultant that's currently working for Cultivate Learning at the University of Washington. But today I am broadcasting to you from the traditional and ancestral lands of the Kumeyaay tribe, which is now known by colonizers as San Diego, California. Now I'm coming to you because I've been getting a lot of questions around a few articles that I wrote for Exchange Magazine. And some of these questions I'm getting has been about language. And so rather than writing something for y'all, I decided I'm gonna give it to you the way that my people have always given it to you, through storytelling. So to start us off, ask yourself, well, you don't have to ask yourself, you probably already educators who've been in the learning environment already, but you probably heard this question, 1 or 2 times, or maybe 1,300 times just this morning. Have you ever had a child ask you why? Why this? Why that? Why? And so let's start our journey today there. Why is it important that even when the educator does not speak the home language of the child, that we continue to try to speak it, that we continue to connect with children in their mother tongue? Now, I'm sure you can, once again, use your fingers to Google this. I'm sure you can watch other people who might have answered this questions in the past. I'm sure you can turn to a colleague and ask them. And so as I look at my colleagues who are all researchers, I'm sure that they'll give you the data, right? They'll give you the brain science, they'll give you the statistics, they'll give you how it's beneficial to the economy in the long run and for businesses in the productivity side of our capitalistic society. That's all great. But can we stop and wonder about the heart side of it? I'm Afro-Caribbean, and my people come from a long line of storytellers. My great-great-great-grandmother, stick with me here, yeah, y'all gonna need to remember that. My great-great-great-grandmother told stories to her children about resistance and rebellion as they faced persecutions in the island from imperialism and colonialism. And then she told their children through music, through prayer, how to be in this world, how to treat our plant relatives, even though this one is a little dying, so I'm not doing that great on this one, right? But they taught them through music and prayer how to give thanks to the air and the water we breathe and drink. And they told their children about cross-cultural love, about building relationships across people. And so now if I see an injustice happening to my indigenous brothers, sisters, or two-spirits, I know we must support them. Same goes to our farm workers or our bus drivers or our elders. They were taught to use their minds, their bodies, their spirits, their voice, all different forms of communication, to remind people that these systems that we all work in, no. They're supposed to work for us. And then they told my mom, so if you've been following along correctly, I told you, right? You got to do the math here. Might want to go back and rewind and check it out again. But they told my mom about the joys of being Black in this world, about how to grow crops just by looking at the position of the moon. They talked about our deities. They talked about how we should be like an okra, which is a staple food in our culture. And so she was told stories about okra and stories that centered okra. And it was a reminder to my mom to be strong like an okra, to be cultured, to be unapologetic, to center healing, to love. And so when my educators, when I was in preschool, told me to speak English, oh, we only speak English here. When they scared my parents who immigrated to the United States, when they told them that I was never going to be successful because I couldn't grasp the English language. And my parents, as a result, decided not to teach me or my brothers and sisters anymore Antiguo and Creole, which is our dialect back home on the island. I didn't just lose my ability to speak to my extended family. That's where our mind first goes to. But for me, I lost the ability to speak to my ancestors in their tongue, in our tongue. I lost generations of stories of how I came to be. I lost eventually who I am before I even discovered who I was. And so, yeah, you want to know why it's important? You don't have to look at research or read an 80-page documentation that somebody wrote somewhere. All you have to do is look at me. All you have to do is go down to your local Black, Brown, Indigenous, Mestizo, Chicano, Caribbean Community Center and hear more about their stories of just simply existing. Our home languages doesn't just teach children how to verbally communicate. It's not just teaching us how to count to 10 and how to tie our shoes and all these Eurocentric ideas of what kindergarten readiness means and what it looks like. But our home languages teaches children to critically think, to engage. It teaches us about joy, about community care, about environmental justice, about immigration justice, about restorative justice, about respecting people's bodily autonomy and consent, and so much more. As my buddy Nick Taronis and I talk about on our podcast that we do together called Napcast, like Napcast, children are not just capable of talking about such issues, but they are more than that. They're more than competent to be able to do so. And so if we are truly here to support them and view them as citizens of this world, of their world, then it's our responsibilities as educators to make sure that they are heard in whatever language that they speak, that they are seen, that they are validated, that they are loved, that they are cared for, no matter what language, race, anatomy, or culture in which they come from. All right, y'all, look, y'all get some coffee in you, right? We rocking out today because I told y'all this can't just be in a document that you read. This is something that you got to live by. This is something that you got to feel. This is something that's got to be in your heart. So let me take a sip of coffee. We're going to get into it. And other things that's coming up, right? Other things that have been coming up is like, yo, okay, Mike, I hear you about this, but what should we actually know about, our home languages? Okay, cool, right? Because our home languages are about being free. Think about it. So much of our lives are told where to be, who to be, how to act, what to think, appropriate ways of feeling, what dreams are attainable, when we should be realistic. So much of our schooling is about control, do this, do that. We're not police officers, like my homie Ijima Jordan says. We are here to facilitate learning. And so the biggest thing I think we need to know about home languages is that there is no right or wrong way to express ourselves. Our home language is a vehicle for self-expression. It's a transmission of cultural knowledge. It's integrated in so many ways of expression, right? We can express ourselves orally, whether it be words or speech or text or songs. It could be visually, whether it's how we dress, artifacts, imagery. It could be auditory, innovative music, rhythms and instruments, language in and of itself, because we're so creative as Black and Brown people that we invent language. It could be kinesthetically through our physical practices. It could be our bodies. These things all play a critical role in shaping our identities and offers intergenerational values, specifically, especially to melanated children. And so I like to think about our home languages as an art form, because it is a meaning-making process, project, program, whatever word you want to use there. It's about making meaning that also has a role in advancing racial equity. But when you think about it as an art, you also have to remember what's the first thing that happens in our schools when we need to save money. The art program gets cut. And so the same thing happens when we think about home languages. And so I believe that when we view and we see our home languages as an art, then perhaps we can simultaneously, without the cutting of it, right, but hopefully we can start to have a paradigm shift and simultaneously teach children to make beautiful, beautiful things, to express ideas, to ask provocative questions. And like art, design an anti-racist world. So once again, what should we know about home languages is that it's not a delegitimized, I don't know, that, I get the word, delegitimate, something like that, form of communication, just because it's not English. Or just because I talk with an accent. Or just because I use words that aren't in a Webster dictionary, doesn't mean that it's not any less valid. When we would get lynched, when my people would get lynched for knowing how to read or write, we invented new languages and manipulated the ones we were forced to assimilate in order to not just survive, but to thrive. That's art. And so when people tell me I have terrible English, I say, hell yeah, good. I don't need to have good English, as we just saw with the word delegitimize, right? In my culture, we communicate a lot through song, through dance, but people don't consider that to be a real skill. They don't view that as education, but how I speak, the rhythm I do it to, the pauses, the breathing. All of that has taught me how to count. It's taught me that the spatial and temporal reasoning skills that I need in order to be successful at my craft. It taught me how to stay on beat when I'm dancing in the club. It taught me how to talk to different teammates when I was playing high school football, which eventually helped me to get a scholarship to play Division I football. It got me my MBA in London. It got me to be right here in front of you today. Y'all feel me? Or did that not resonate? Hey, well, the best thing about all this being recorded is that you can always go back and make meaning of it, right? As I'm about to quote the old wise prophet known as Missy Elliott, is it worth it? Let me work it. I put my thing down, flip it in reverse it. So basically, you know what I mean, well, in this context, she was talking about something else back there. But in this context, I mean, you can always go back and hit that rewind button. Now, if y'all are still rocking with me, I want to dive into this question. Is there anything that educators should know that specifically supports children's home languages? And so when I think about that question, when I think about supporting children's home languages, I think about everything that comes with this child. I like to think of it as both an opportunity to strengthen not just their language, but their community as well, because they go hand in hand for communities of color. And so I would start with the history of the language, because there might be some traumas hidden behind that. If you hear families saying, shh, don't speak Spanish, that's a cue to you to work to understand the why behind that. Just like we started today, right? The toddlers in my classroom that always goes, why? Take that, be more curious. Work to understand why they don't want you to speak Spanish. In my culture, in the adjacent ones in the Caribbean, more or less, right? Because it's not a blanket statement. Creole was viewed as the language of slaves. And so it has traditionally had little status. It has no acceptability in official or formal contexts. It's considered to be the speech of the poor and just overall generally looked down upon. And so there's a lot of trauma packed in there. There's reasons why, as I've grown and worked to understand, why my parents decided not to. And so if you don't speak the language, then seek and be guided by people who appreciate the importance of that home language and utilize a variety of indigenous forms. That's stories, that's poems, that's dance, that's songs. Use all of that to be able to connect and teach the children. I'm all about personally exposing myself each day to culturally relevant materials and different situations in order to understand the nuance of these meetings, because sometimes you can study it, but you don't understand the nuances of it. And so I'm all about working to institute parts of my day that is potentially only in the home languages of the children. And so I think we get caught up in the fact that our program is not labeled as a multilingual program or a dual language program, and then we hide behind that. But at the end of the day, there are no rules that says we can't make it into one. And so, for example, if the children speak predominantly English and Spanish in my class, I have all the music in Spanish. There's no rules that says, hey, well, Mike, you're not gonna do a language class. But there's no language, there's no rules like that. And so scaffold in different words or phrases on my little cheat sheet that I'm able to use and recall upon over and over again. Another practice I have adopted is that for nap time, I always have the stories read twice, once in English, and then again, once in Spanish. At bathroom breaks, I've learned enough words and phrases to be able to give all my instructions to all the children in Spanish. All of this is done so we can engage once again in that paradigm shift to be able to view language as an opportunity to be liberated. Because when your views are changed, then you can really begin to develop an authentic in relationship and engage in functional activities that allows children to experience their home language as a living and a breathing thing. Whew. All right, I'm gonna need another sip of coffee, right? But really, it's been an amazing experience sharing space with all of y'all right now. I ain't got nothing but love and admiration for the love you're giving all the children, but especially the extra love you giving to our Black and Brown children. Because the truth is, we're living in a society that is struggling to do just that. We're living in a society that is struggling to love our Black and Brown bodies, minds, spirits, souls, gifts, joy, wonders, awes, and creativity. And so, as I wrap up today, I want to leave you with a few words of wisdom that can be applicable for anyone who works directly or indirectly with young children. If we're going to talk about being in a democracy, y'all, if we are going to talk about being the greatest country on earth, blah, 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 right? We're going to talk about how our classrooms and learning environments are democratic. Then we also got to remember that in mature democracies, it's the minority voices that are empowered and centered. From governance to self-identity to the decision-making process, etc. And so if you're going to bestow that title upon your name, your classroom, and say, this is a democratic classroom, blah, 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 you need to be able to work on it as well and to be challenged in your practice. You can't waver in this belief, or when management wants to go in a different direction and it's at the cost of linguistic justice, then you need to fight for it. And we need to check ourselves as well, because oftentimes we are the ones who cast English as the language of the prestige and how we can get to social mobility in this country. And so, once again, just to reiterate, if you want to call yourself a democratic classroom, if you want to have signs that says all children are welcome and they're seen and are valued, then ask yourself, where are you centering the minority voices? How are you empowering them? How are you allowing them to govern? How are you allowing them free choice? How are you allowing them opportunities to be in their own body and to make decisions that are best for them? And then when people are pushing up against that, or when they do something that might make you feel uncomfortable, or whenever they cut the language or our arts program and they want to go in a direction, but they got to get rid of linguistic justice, how are you standing up for And to close us out, specifically for my BIPOC educators, for my Black, Indigenous people of color, I want you to be able to give yourself permission to love your language in the ways in which it was intended, in the ways in which in our blood it was given to us. Love your language in the ways in which it was stripped from us, or in the ways our ancestors would have wanted us to use it. And so as we continue to transform our spaces into one that is free, healing, trusting, and validating of all the ways we show up in the world, I invite you to consider the ways that pride, freedom, and joy lives and breathes in your or your children's multilingual blood. We're here to reclaim the language our ancestors heard in their womb. And that's not just about recognizing the social, political dimensions of language and language access, but it also means working to dismantle language barriers and to equalize power dynamics and to build strong communities for social and racial justice. It's about rewriting your own histories too. So many thanks for everyone for rocking out with me. Blessings to you and your community. Espero que encuentres paz y alegría. And until next time, much love.